Ukraine was a bomb out of Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. The public wants it. The public. So he goes like, I don't believe you. He said, no way. And I said, way. And then he goes like, I don't believe you. But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this, he believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb out of Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing, you're going to bomb Beijing. I said, I have no choice. I got to tell them. We're going to bomb Beijing. And he didn't believe me either, except 10%. And 10% is all you need. In fact, 5% would have been okay, too. And we never had a problem. We would have never had a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you right now. Oh, wow. I gotta get rid of those. Sorry. Blue light glasses, ladies and gentlemen. You got to protect your eyes, when you're getting a little bit old. I'll tell you right now, Russia is not scared at all with the new sanctions that Trump had just announced today. Like, not even close, not even remotely close. They've already came out and they've made their own statements. They don't give two craps what Trump plans on doing for Ukraine. And I tell you, I've been looking across the front line today. I've been talking to a lot of different people, and it's not looking pretty for Russia. And for that reason alone, I'm kind of troubled, to be honest. I'm kind of troubled at what's to come in the future between Ukraine and Russia, between Israel and between Iran, because they're all connected. If you guys have been watching the show for a while, you all know that. Nander Gang, what's up? They're all connected, and it's all a big problem. Right? And it's all starting to seriously come to a head. U.S. dollar is doing okay, but it is rather weak. BRICS last week decides that it's going to, start talking deeper about having their new currency. Ukrainian front lines are sold out as far as Russia is concerned. As a matter of fact, Ukraine actually took more terrain from Russia today. And they're moving on them. And now with these new, support, we'll call it, from the United States that Trump had announced, Ukraine's going to get a massive influx of weapons, a massive influx over the next unforeseeable future. And when you start looking at, okay, well, what would it take for Ukraine and Russia to have peace? Well, it would take on the Ukraine side for Russia to be kicked completely and totally out of, Russia's got to be kicked all the way out of every square inch of Ukrainian territory. And for Russia, their goalpost continues to shift. It continues to shift further and further and further, down the line. And you can't say that Russia didn't intend on sacking Kiev, because their warplanes have came out and their warplanes ended up getting leaked. So we know that Russia surrounded Kiev and that they were going to try to force Zelensky to his knees in the initial invasion, and they failed. And now they're trying to save face. Putin is literally trying to save face. And I know you guys think that, and I would agree with the statement that God forbid, Trump get embarrassed or that he look poorly on the international stage, because that's what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing is Trump coming out and saying, you know what, we're not happy. So, you embarrassed me to my face. I went into meetings. I told the American people that you were going to do all these great things, and that you were going to come to the table. And then you ended up bombing the crap out of an orphanage, according to my wife, because I don't even follow the news. I didn't even know that was happening. So what do you think Putin's going to do on the flip side when he gets embarrassed on the international stage after he's been trying to sell bricks, when he's been trying to do all of these things? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just a little bit of what we're going to be going over tonight. Welcome back. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Always last in line, coming in gift now, Speak the Truth membership. Incog Verde coming in gift now 5. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. Always, I'm your host, Matt Tardio. And yeah, we've got a lot of really interesting things that are kind of going on behind the scenes right now. And we're going to start off talking about the Middle East, because in my opinion, the Middle East is a tinderbox, and it's where a lot of things are going to explode. And it's not because it wasn't intended, that maybe just, it's just the way it happened. No, the right conditions were set in the Middle East for all of this stuff to go down. I'm going to say that again. The right conditions were set in the Middle East for all of this stuff to go down. And all fingers point back towards Russia. Every single, little thing that you can find. When it goes to Iran having, uranium enrichment capabilities, you got Russian scientists that are at the helm teaching Iran how to do all this stuff. When it goes to Syria, when it goes down to Jelani, you had Russian forces that were backing the Assad regime, fighting against HTS. that's now currently in control of Syria. And then the U.S. goes and it goes to make a deal with this guy, right? Trump did. We removed, the foreign terror designation for HTS. Now the Syrian army, if you will, what other people are coming to call it. And the Syrian army made a huge move down south of Damascus earlier today against the Druze, and they were trying to kill the crap out of them. Got leaked audio that I'll play in a little bit. I played it this morning, but I'm going to play it again because I think it's important for people to hear where Jelani, Syria's, de facto leader, the president of Syria, if you will, disgust me to say those words because he's a former Al-Qaeda operative, terrorist, literally told people, no, go down there and kill everybody. The town that Jelani's forces went into got taken back by Druze today inside of southern Syria. And you guys are going to see some of that battle here in a second. And right now, as we speak, Jelani's men are rallying, and not just your average fighters either, dude. He's sending some of his elite forces down there, and Israel's bombing the crap out of them. The United States of America asked Israel to ease off of them, and still Israel is bombing the crap out of them. And right now, we got scenes like this that are pouring out of there of fighting that's taking place down there south of Damascus, exactly where Israel told them not to go. Yeah, I saw somebody say, isn't that a genocide, what he's doing down there? Yeah, it is. It is a genocide. It's a big genocide, what is taking place down there, and you'll see some of that. And here you go. It's Sawada, Scott Bevins coming in gifting out a Speak the Truth membership. I'll put it up on the map. You know what? Yeah, here. So this is where we're talking about over inside Syria. For those of you guys that weren't here for this morning, we'll brief it up. So there's Damascus, Al-Sawada. All right, all the way down here in the south. This is where this stuff's taken off. And Israel's got a buffer zone that's kind of like built out down and around there. All right, and then this is where they have been bombing all the way down here. This is what they've been fighting over. And you had Druze that were crossed over from the Golan Heights coming over to here to help out. And then you've got, obviously, all right, the Syrian army, i.e. frickin', Jelani's Al-Qaeda operatives that are down there pushing in on it as well. And it was a huge firefight today, and Israel was bombing the crap out of them, forced a lot of the armor to withdraw and go outside the city. But all they did was they backed out, and they regrouped and reorganized, and they're going back in. They're going back after it. Dylan Lever says, hey, Matt, appreciate everything you do for all of us. Keep up the awesome work, my man. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Boner coming in. Boner. I don't even know how to say your name right. Boner. But you're coming in gifting out 10 Speak the Truth memberships. That's just one of those words I don't spell, and I like to think that people aren't going to name themselves that, but then again, this is Speak the Truth, and God only knows the different types of people that are going to come over here. But yeah, here's Syrian forces firing rockets up indiscriminately over into the city. Well, those aren't rockets. Those are tracer rounds. Excuse me. That's the wrong video. Yeah, so this thing isn't going anywhere, man. Like they're trading rounds, like they're doubling down on this position, right? Like Jelani's men are doubling down, going over in there to like murder Druze. Israel's not backing down. The United States of America tells Israel to back off, but we sure as crap aren't going to do it. And here you have like confirmation, this is supposedly alleged confirmation that earlier today, before all of this was going down, that Syria is actually sending in some of their like more elite troops of their freaking nut jobs. And these elite troops are the ones with night vision and everything else. Obviously, you see fighting taking place at night and everything else. It's about to get gnarly down there, man. It's about to get real gnarly. And and by the way, the confirmation is this over top of the can that he's got there, the heat shield that's on the can. I forget what the actual name of that sucker is, but it basically, when you end up shooting these dang things with the suppressor on, you end up getting these like heat waves that come off, and you shoot so dang much out of them, you end up like really not being able to see what the hell you're shooting at. So it's really important that you end up having something on there to kind of dissipate like some of that heat, and it does help out. But yeah, that red band wrapped around the black over there, that's like indicative of these forces that are like going in there, and they're supposedly have night vision and stuff. This is just to kind of get you guys caught up. This is like a quick 1-minute video that I put together earlier today for over on X to kind of get you guys caught up to what's going on, because it's not just over inside Syria either. We had predicted and said that, Iranian-backed militias like Hezbollah are going to start attacking Israel again. That's taking place. So now we've got Jelani's forces that Trump had backed, that he's being embarrassed by, that are now going and killing all of these freaking Druze that are going down to the south and killing all the Druze and Christians, by the way. I'm going to show you a freaking church that ended up getting burned down there today. But then we also have like bombing that's taking place over inside Syria. Yeah, now I want you to read that statement that's down there at the bottom of the screen. Last I checked, Jelani, the president of Syria, that's like literally directing his people to go over there and kill these freaking people, is literally the nut job that's going, allegedly, we got word, I think it was like last week, after they lifted the FTO designation, that he might be actually at the White House before he makes his way to the UN. And so now Trump's caught between a freaking rock and a hard place. He's got to admit that he screwed up. Husky Ninja, thank you for the evening stream. Yeah, of course, Husky Ninja. That's what I'm here for. I see the devil something. I don't know. He said, hey, Matt, have you heard of this guy, Mansour Ashkar? He's a legit Israeli Drew SF, and he's in touch with his family in Syria. He's on YouTube. Yes, I did. Somebody actually asked me this morning to reach out to him for an interview, so I'm going to do that. Vicky Ratcliffe coming in, jumping in, becoming a true supporter. That's what I like to see. Always loving getting more true supporters in the house. So that's taking place, right? All of this crap. Not to mention the bombings that are taking place. I mean, I can show you guys like bombs being dropped on Hezbollah positions if you want. They're like, there's nothing new and freaking incredible that ends up coming out of that. But it ends up being a problem. Now, check this out. Here you have this guy. He is the Israeli minister, all right, for, how do I want to say this? Basically, like the diaspora, like in anti-Semitism and everything else. And he went out today and he made this statement on X. And this is kind of a big deal. This guy coming in gifting out 20 Speak the Truth memberships. Hell yeah. And he said, if it looks like Hamas, talks like Hamas, and acts like Hamas, it's Hamas. We must not stand idly by the force of the Islamo-Nazi terror regime of al-Qaeda operatives in suits. Anyone who thinks that Jelani is a legitimate leader is gravely mistaken. This is a terrorist, a barbaric murderer who should be eliminated now. We saw the horrific massacre of the Alawites, which European leaders remained silent about. And now we see the acts of slaughter and humiliation against the Druze. The terror regime in Syria must be fought. Now, while he doesn't really have any stance over the frickin' Israeli government, the Israeli military, doesn't really exactly have a pull, but it is a political statement for this guy to be able to put this out, calling for the elimination of the de facto president inside Syria that Trump just backed. And make no mistake about it, he backed the guy by removing the FTO designation, by allowing him to come to the United States and speak at the UN General Assembly. You think we're going to let Putin come to the U.S. and do that? Probably not. Right? But we're going to let this guy do it. It's over there massacring these people. And it's kind of reminiscent of, what was it last week, man? Who was that guy? There was another statement that ended up coming out like that, basically threatening I believe it was like threatening Iran and the Ayatollah. He used to hold a position. Was it Defense Minister Katz? Like former Defense Minister Katz came out with a statement last week that was really how do you want to say, aggressive towards Iran. And we've got all these phantom explosions that are going off over inside of Iran right now, you know? Now, I will tell you that while the Jelani's forces ended up pushing into that town and ended up like pushing the Druze back, they were coming in with their tanks, they were coming in with technicals, they were coming in with all sorts of stuff. And that's why Israel ended up going over and bombing them. Well, they ended up pushing back really hard. You ended up having the Druze go in. They ended up setting up different ambushes and things like that around the city. And then they launched an assault. And without the tanks and the armor vehicle and Jelani's men pulling out, they ended up doing pretty dang good.
Hi, Shabab. Hiya!
ساتر يا خيي.
I saw a video earlier today of one of the ambushes that popped off. It actually got captured by a couple different angles because they ended up having, how do I want to say this? They ended up having like a couple different news reporters that were embedded with HTS, and they were rolling into that town. And then from like a high-rise structure, they ended up just getting slammed. This obviously is, I mean, it's self-described on the video. What you're looking at is, you know, the IDF or the Israeli Air Force actually striking Jelani's forces. And I mean, I originally, when I saw this, it was just a couple strikes that were being reported coming across social media. It was things on the ground. And we ended up getting like this actual footage of all of the different people that freaking Israel ended up bombing over inside Syria. All bets are off at this point as far as Matt's concerned. Like, we are starting to see like the beginning of the end of Jelani inside Syria, which within itself is going to create a massive power vacuum over the Middle East. It's going to destabilize stuff. So Russia was really like kind of smart to kind of get behind the people that they got behind, getting behind Assad and everybody else, because, you know, if Assad stays in power, well, great. There's just going to be this never-ending war in the Middle East. U.S. is going to constantly be sucked into that. If Jelani ends up winning, great. Because this, like what we're seeing on this screen, is kind of an inevitable thing that, again, is going to destabilize the region. The U.S. is going to end up getting sucked back in. And then we're going to have this thing with Iran that's coming up because Iran is continuing to enrich uranium. They're not slowing down on it. And what's even worse is we have videos like this that are coming out of the Druze. Now, this is one of, I'm going to tell you guys before I end up putting this video on the screen, this is the least, how do I want to say this? This is the least provocative video, like the safest thing that I could find that they were doing to like share over on YouTube. So I'm just going to play it. I'm going to mute it. All right. But like the Druze's mustache is like one of those things that they end up having. And all of Jelani's men ended up going in there. And there's videos of these dudes literally ripping off their mustaches, like just like ripping them off, like just ripping their freaking faces to shreds over there, or shaving the mustaches off and all that other crap. This guy's allegedly dead now, by the way. This gentleman that's getting his mustache ripped off, he was like a major Druze leader. They killed him after they embarrassed him, is what the reports are saying. Yeah. People are saying it's never ending, and you're right. It's not. It's going to keep on until something changes and something happens. So now you're going to have Israel that's going to be, how do I want to say this? You're going to have Israel that's going to be involved now on another front over inside Syria. And it's going to divide them up even further. And that means that conflict over inside Gaza is going to drag out even longer. The conflict with Hezbollah inside of Lebanon is going to drag out even longer. Israel dealing with the West Bank is going to drag out even longer. See, Russia's not dumb. They figured out that if they can destabilize a bunch of that area via their proxies with Iran, right? Like in all of this crap and all of this support that they've been leveraging over the years and set all this stuff in place, that even if Israel is trying to do these things, even if Israel is trying to like take care of Gaza and Hezbollah and the West Bank and all of these other things, even if they're trying to do all of that, as long as these new fronts keep opening up, Israel's not going to be able to deal with it. You just literally have too many forces that are divided. Colby says, what do you think would happen if some Ukrainian SF guys took Putin out? Would that stop the war and make it worse? I actually think it would stop. I think if Putin actually ended up getting assassinated, I think it would stop. I think it would stop. I think Putin is like the driving force. And when we look at like their stated goals and the different things that, you know, they've been trying to accomplish over time, they're always shifting, they're always changing. Denazification this, denazification that, taking over this little portion. Now they want to take a part of Zaporizhia is like a new stated goal. I think they just came out with it yesterday. Like, okay, well, you know, we're happy with where we're at, but now we need Zaporizhia. Like, we just need to take over all of that. Right? And so they're constantly shifting their goalposts. And Zelensky's not going to stand for it. Ukraine's not going to stand for it. Down in the Middle East, you've got Israel that's divided, and we've got Iran enriching uranium. And all of this crap has the fingerprints of Russia all over it. And then Putin, I think, was cold and calculated when he ended up embarrassing Trump. Very cold and calculated when he ended up embarrassing Trump. And now we've got Putin that wants to, how do I want to say this, keep the war going. And it's very obvious because he's, again, throwing soldiers into the meat grinder up in Sumy. You've got him throwing, you know, people into the meat grinder down in the south and the east. And wait till I show you this ISW report in a minute here. I also think it's important to show you just how destabilized this whole thing ended up going. Like, the Druze ended up literally breaking out of the Golan Heights. And I want you guys to look at this video, because I can't remember if it's this video or a different one, where IDF soldiers are literally just standing by. I think it was the one from earlier in the day when the Druze ended up breaking out. This is the Druze returning back into the Golan Heights after going over and supporting the people over in that town. But you just see like IDF soldiers that are standing there, like letting these guys like just run back into the Golan Heights. And it was the same way on their way out. Smokey Sergeant says the administration approach with the present day Syria is going to bite us in the booty. We need to quit thinking that partnering with Islamists will ever produce anything good. You would have thought we would have learned our lesson after like trying to support the Taliban. You would have thought we would have learned our lesson a million times over at this point, being the United States of America, but we haven't. Does Putin have dementia? No, he doesn't. And I think it's time that like the West just needs to learn that some people like just like to watch the frickin' world burn. I mean, quite literally. This is a church. This is a Christian church down there in the South, right outside that town. Jelani's men that allegedly went down there to quell the violence that was taking place, because with all the reason all of this started was you ended up having like militia members that were going in after and killing Druze. And then the Druze stood up for themselves. And then Jelani's forces were like, oh, we're going to go stop all this. And just went in there and started massacring the Druze. But they didn't stop at the Druze. They went over and they burnt this church. They lit this church on fire. So they're going after Christians too, which we already know because we saw massive piles of bodies of the Alawites and everybody else over there. And so they're keeping up with this dang genocide. Meanwhile, videos like this are coming out of Gaza. Check this one out. This is great. This is up in the north, Biyat Hanan, right? In Gaza, where the IDF is blowing up massive weapons caches that Hamas still has. Check that out. Those are huge. This war is a problem now. I told you guys, like, my belief on why Trump decided to kind of partner with Jelani is we needed a place to put all of these displaced Syrians. Or I'm sorry, all these displaced Palestinians. What better place than the UN paid for camps over inside of Jelani controlled Syria? Let's give the guy a shot, but we can't do it. It ain't going nowhere. Ah, my goodness. At least humanitarian aid's going okay, right? Humanitarian aid distro inside Gaza is going okay, right?
I'm standing here a few hundred meters away from an aid distribution site that is run by the American company, the GHF. The idea is to give aid directly to the Gazan civilians and bypass Hamas's hands. Hamas, since the beginning of the war, has been doing everything they can to loot aid. They have been doing everything they can to get the aid and sell it at a higher price for Gazan civilians, prevent it from the Gaza civilians, and maintain their terror machine, their war machine, while doing so. So this is a new solution that brings aid directly to the people of Gaza. And if you can zoom in over there, you can kind of see thousands of people walking back peacefully. They have bags of aid on their shoulders, bags of food on their shoulders. I have been here for about half an hour. They have been going in and out peacefully. This place is run by an American company that also has private security within the complex, a closed off area. And the people have been coming more and more, which tells you very simply, they feel safe. I believe this is an endeavor that will have even more points and more spots for Gaza civilians, making it more comfortable and more effective.
Yeah, it's amazing that Israel's now putting out that video, because Israel sucks at putting out like actual information and propaganda. Bullet Magnet, by the way, bro, I love your name. Gifting out 5 Speak the Truth memberships. Y'all owe him and Sky God and everybody else has been gifting out memberships a thank you down in the chat. You know what I mean? It's odd to me that that's coming out, because just earlier, let me see if I have it. I think I still saved it from this morning. It should still be on here. The aid distribution that I have over inside Gaza. And where'd it go? I gotta have it. Here we go. Let me open this one up. Pictures of all of the humanitarian aid that's over there inside Gaza. And the big complaint that I ended up hearing when I was talking to that company last week was that the UN's not delivering aid, that they've got all this aid stacked up and they're looking at getting that message out and everything else, right? That's what they wanted to do. Wanted to get all that aid out there. They wanted to take care of all that stuff and get it out to those people. And yeah, they were super interested in making that happen, getting me out there and everything else. And all of a sudden, crickets. Crickets, crickets, crickets. But now, right, Israel's putting out their own propaganda pieces on it. So truthfully, I want to know why nobody has actually like got over and talked to the people inside of Gaza and asked them questions as to how they feel about the current situation, what they plan on doing. Why is it that not a single flipping reporter over the last 20 plus months has gone over, like, outside of Al Jazeera, outside of the freaking Palestinian media outlets, those people in the blue vests that just say media? Why has nobody gone up and actually talked to one of these people? Why haven't we actually heard from them? Blue collar colonizer. Matt looks like he's been hitting the weights. It's a good look either way. No homo. You know, yeah, I mean, I don't know about hitting the weights, but, you know, just taking care of myself. Jenna, verified reviewer, becoming a true supporter. Heck yeah, girl. Welcome to the club. I think you're a girl. I don't know. I get your guys' freaking genders wrong all the time, and I feel really bad about it. You know what I mean? So that's that problem. But now let's talk about this problem. Let's talk about the Ukraine issue that the United States and the world is currently facing, because it's not a U.S. issue. It's not a Ukraine issue. This is a world issue. Very clearly, this is a world issue. And like I said, you know, Trump, he is a bit of, how do I want to say, narcissist when it comes down to a lot of different things. I think you could throw that out there, right? Very prideful man. And I think maybe his advisors are getting wrong. And it's not even worth it to zoom in on this front line. A lot of you guys have asked me, like, over time, like, Matt, why is it that you are not doing more heavy reporting on Ukraine? This entire front line has barely moved. I heard somebody state earlier that they had asked AI to assess if you were to put a snail on, like, the furthest border of Russia at the start of the war and just tell that snail to go, that it would already be in Poland. So from the time that Russia invaded, listen to me now, from the time that Russia invaded Ukraine to present day, if you would have taken a snail and told it go, all the way from the freaking eastern border of Ukraine where it meets up with Russia, and told it just go, it would have crawled its happy butt all the way into Poland by now. And yet the Russian forces are stalled out over there. And when you understand that, you understand that Russia has been pushing and pushing and pushing. And we even had Marco Rubio come out and say, Russia's lost probably about 100,000 soldiers this year alone. Just 100,000 this year. That tells you how ridiculous of a war this is. I'm not even going to bother going over the non-existent freaking gains that Russia has made over inside of Ukraine. The only gain terrain inside of Ukraine so far is by Ukrainian forces outside of Sumy that's actually been confirmed. Like, actual geolocated confirmed outside of Sumy, Ukraine had made a little bit more of a territorial gain. And if you go all the way back to the video that I put out like last month, talking about Russia is about to fall into a trap. They're about to get freaking schwacked. That thing aged like fine wine. Fine wine. Like that bottle ought to be worth like hundreds of millions of dollars at this point. Because look what happens when I go down this report. Doesn't matter going into it. We'll go over all these other little like nitpicking things. All right. But let's go down to the actual operational front on these different fronts. Russia forces conducted offensive operations in northern Kharkiv Oblast on July 15th, but did not advance. Offensive operations, meaning they're pushing in the defensive lines, did not advance near Kharkiv. Russian forces continued offensive operations near Velki, but did not advance. Let's do it again. Let's go to another one. Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Lyman direction on July 15th, but did not advance. Let's do another one. Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Severitsk direction on July 15th, but did not advance. Let's do another one. Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Chasiv Yar direction on July 15th, did not advance. Let's do another one. Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Pokrovsk direction on July 15th, but did not advance. Make confirmed advances. Russian forces continued offensive operations in the Novopavlivka direction on July 15th. Did not advance. Russian continued offensive operations in Velika Novosilka direction on July 15th. Did not advance. You guys getting the picture here? Russian forces continued assaults in the Heliopol direction on July 15th. Did not make confirmed advances. This continues across the entire front line. Russian forces have been going in waves and have gotten literally nowhere. So I want you to think about that. If Russia is conducting offensive operations, fighting against defensive positions over inside of Ukraine, how many troops are they losing over and over and over on this? That 100,000 figure that ended up getting put out by our Secretary of State becomes a hell of a lot more believable. When you talk to dudes like Nate Vance, who I literally heard him saying that he was over there stacking up Russians like cordwood, it makes perfect sense. I saw a video earlier today of a dude from frickin' Africa, trying to remember the country he was from, saying that, like, dude, he signed the contract, he got forced into sign it, whatever, but he hates his life. And he was happy that Ukraine ended up capturing it. I mean, he does not want to go back to Russia. They ended up paying him. They didn't end up doing what they said they would do. And his life sucked. He doesn't want to go back. So Russia is kind of in this little embarrassing place where they're launching offensive operations across Ukraine. And by the way, these offensive operations, they were launching and not taking any terrain, not a freaking inch, that Ukraine didn't allow them to. If you don't believe me, go back a month and look at the video that I put out. Not an inch that Ukraine didn't allow them to. And they're dying left and right. The Russians are dying like hand over fist over there, or at least people wearing Russian uniforms. And then you've got them like sourcing more people from frickin', the DPRK. Well, that's not going to turn out very good either. There was a statement earlier today, whether or not, how do I want to say this? Well, here, let me, you know what? Let me just grab the video because, videos speak louder than 1,000 words. There's a rumor that came out earlier today that because the United States is considering giving Ukraine these long-range weapons, that we are pushing Ukraine to target Moscow. That Trump was asking Zelensky whether or not he'd be able to go after Moscow. Is this robbing the vid? No, it's not robbing the vid. Asking him whether or not they would be capable of targeting Moscow. Trump actually got asked that question earlier today by a reporter. Listen to what he says.
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
We'll listen to it again. He literally got asked the question, should Zelensky target Moscow? And again, this is after the United States had announced, this is after Trump had announced that we are going to be giving additional weapons, additional equipment, and everything else over to Ukraine. Listen.
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
Okay, so Trump says Zelensky shouldn't target Moscow, even though we're going to give him, rumored all of these new long-range weapons, all of this fancy new equipment, and all this other crap, right? Like, all of this new equipment's coming in now. Ask any U.S. troop how they felt in Iraq or Afghanistan about the United States government placing restrictions on them fighting against enemy forces and how well that turns out. You can't fight a war with one hand tied behind your back. Those suckers need to be loose. You need to be able to cut loose. And you need to be able to do what you need to do. And as much as I like to say that we are giving Ukraine the proper support, finally, that all of that's coming. And by the way, this new support that's going to Ukraine, obviously we had the minerals deal that ended up getting signed earlier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the big picture here that's actually going on is that part of this deal that Trump's coming out with Ukraine is that, and it's not just Ukraine, it's with NATO, is that NATO troops are going to be able to buy U.S. weaponry and that they can then give that weaponry to Ukraine to use against Russia. Underneath the Biden administration, when we opened up sending it, when we actually started providing weaponry to Ukraine, we ended up telling Ukraine that under very limited circumstances, could you actually use that equipment and target Russian forces? And they did a pretty damn good job with that equipment. They really did, for the restrictions that they ended up having. And it got them nowhere. I mean, they were able to hold the line. They were able to take some advances in Kursk, etc. But it pretty much got them nowhere. And now we're increasing all of that. And you just heard it from Trump. He doesn't want them to target Moscow. He doesn't. So how do you combat an enemy force that literally invaded your country, that is massacring your people, that is killing your civilians, that is raping your women, that is torturing your children and civilians? How do you stop that force with a hand tied behind your back? I don't think you can. And Ukraine's been doing a pretty good job. They're going after Russian supply lines down in the south. I mean, if I was to get this map up, that's not the map. That's Trump's ugly face again. If I was to get like the map up when we talk about the south, right? Ukraine's been doing a pretty good job in the south, going after like, Russian supply lines down here. They were knocking out just a couple of weeks ago. They're knocking out railroad tracks and things like that, slowing down Russian supplies going in. Obviously, we ended up seeing attacks going on the Kerch Bridge. We ended up seeing, Ukraine trying to cut that off. It didn't work, but they tried. They're knocking out S-400 systems, things like that down in Crimea. They're taking care of that. And you can't, Jasmine Rose, thank you very much. You cannot stop them that way. You can't. But Ukraine's come up with some pretty clever ways. They're going after Russia's supply lines. And so Russia, I don't think it's sustainable. If you were to ask yourself, okay, how many more months can Russia take of actually losing that many troops, of actually having their supply lines affected that bad and needing to beg North Korea and Iran to keep giving them stuff to keep this war going? And by the way, in return, Russia's over inside of Iran building frickin' uranium enrichment sites. Who gives a shit if Iran gets a frickin' nuke, right? It'll just destabilize the frickin' Middle East even more. And it doesn't even matter at this point because now we're about to bomb Iran. I'm telling you, within about 2 weeks here, if not within 2 weeks, most certainly by the end of summer, either Israel or both Israel and the United States are going to end up bombing Iran because the writing's on the wall. Over inside of Iran, things are just randomly exploding. We got gas pipelines that are going off, right, left and right, taking out key Iranian officials. Like, I don't know, but if I was in the IRGC, I'd be going after those gas companies. That's what I'd be doing. But they're not. And Russia's not making any advancements. Trump got asked this question today. You want some honesty? Here's some honesty. Listen to this question Trump got asked.
Are you on Ukraine's side now?
No, I'm on nobody's side. I'm on no.
Why?
I want to, what the side I'm on? Humanity's side. I want to stop the killing of thousands of people a week. I want to stop the killing. I want the killing to stop in the Ukraine-Russia war. That's the side I'm on.
Are you on Ukraine's?
Ooh, so he's on the side of wanting the killing to stop. This morning, when I was given, on this morning's podcast, I said, I think maybe Trump had learned his lesson. I think Trump had learned his lesson when it came to Ukraine and Russia, and that you can't trust Russia, and that Vladimir's Putin word doesn't mean diddly squat. And it would appear that Trump hasn't learned his lesson. Somebody asked, okay, I did two different appearances today. I did one over on TikTok and I did one over on X. Taking questions, panels, whatever, right? And question that got asked on TikTok by somebody was like, okay, well, what is the overall goal here? Like, is this going to impact? Is the United States giving Ukraine all of these weapons actually going to bring us a stop to this war? And the problem with America is that we want immediate results. We want, I did this, therefore this war's ended, and that's that. We bombed Iran. Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons anymore. We gave Israel support. All of a sudden, this Hamas situation should go away. And that is a false reality. It doesn't work that way. Bullet Magnet coming in, dropping another $2. Appreciate you, man. Rebel and Dave, Ukraine fanboy. Wait, you love some Zelensky? Yeah. Yeah, I do. Not going to lie. Kind of a fan. Is that a problem? I'm not a fan of everything he does, just like I'm not a fan of everything frickin' Orange Man Bad does. I'm not a fan of everything that frickin' anybody does, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't agree 100% with anybody, and I don't think anybody should. But am I against Russia? Abso-frickin-lutely. Am I against radical Islam? Abso-frickin-lutely. Am I against Iran? Absolutely. Why? Because they seek to destabilize the very country we live in. And your English appears to be pretty good there, Rebel and Dave Adventure. Appears to be pretty good. So I'm assuming you are in an English-speaking Western country. Maybe I'm wrong, but your English appears to be okay. And you better give a shit yourself. Because if you don't, you're going to feel it. You think Putin cares if the dollar collapses? You think Putin cares that you supported him in the dollar collapse? Do you think he's got a place for you over in Russia? Do you think he's got like some really nice like apartment just waiting for you? Is that what you think? And you can go live your little communist dream over there? No, he doesn't. Absolutely doesn't give a like flip about you, man. So yeah, personally, I think that it's a problem. And I think Putin needs stopped. And last week at the BRICS summit, Putin ended up coming out and they ended up having a big talk about a new currency that BRICS wants to have. And I know we've been talking about a BRICS currency a couple times over. But if BRICS ends up coming out with a new currency and all of the BRICS nations decide to trade on that currency and the petrodollar is kind of done at that point, you watch, the US dollar is going to slide about 20% south. If you're making 50 grand a year, you might as well be making 40. By the way, the government's going to take their chunk of that, so you might as well be making 30. Your life is going to suck. And that doesn't even account for like the US debt and everything else that we go into it and the implications of that. If the dollar goes down, so do we. And that is exactly why Trump last week ended up saying basically anybody going after the US dollar is going to have problems immediately following the BRICS summit. Because he can also see the writing on the wall. And while I thought that Trump had learned his lesson, what did he just state in this video? Let's hear that again.
Side now?
No, I'm on nobody's side. I'm on no.
Why?
I want to, you know what the side I'm on? Humanity's side. I want to stop the killing of thousands of people a week. I want to stop the killing. I want the killing to stop in the Ukraine-Russia war. That's the side I'm on.
Are you on your...
Oh, okay. So he wants the killing to stop. Well, here's the sad, sad news that a lot of people need to realize is that at no point in time can you stop somebody that is that deep in their beliefs. Sometimes people just need to have their foreheads canoed, and I can't explain that. Like, I cannot explain that enough. Putin's end to this war and Zelensky's end to this war are so freaking polar opposites that there is no end unless one side gets complete and total victory. It is going to take Russia to completely and totally get kicked out of Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, this war has just turned into a 5+ year war from today. This war is going to go from the Trump administration, the war inside of Ukraine is going to go from the Trump administration into whoever the heck comes in office next. Why? Ukraine's got to rebuild itself. They've got to rebuild, rebuild their stockpiles. Russia's going to continue to blow their stockpiles, as we've seen this year. So Ukraine's got to rebuild their stockpiles. They got to get a better trained force. They got to get more intel on where Russia's at. They got to continue to attack the supply lines. They got to continue all that crap. Meanwhile, they're going to be working with the depleted supply system because the U.S. is going to be caught up in the Middle East. Think Putin's stupid? No. If the U.S. is busy supporting wars in the Middle East, we're going to have a lot of freaking munitions that are going into that. And that is less munitions for Ukraine, and that is more Russians that are going to die. That's more Ukrainians that are going to die. OG Smirnov, as a Ukrainian-born U.S. Navy corpsman vet, Putin won't stop until somebody stops him. Everything he says is random stuff, and the only thing he cares about is actions. You are correct, which is why he fits in so well over inside of the Middle East, right? I've said it before. Violence is the currency over in the Middle East. Violence. Nobody gives two craps about money. I mean, they do. You can buy allegiance, but at the same time, if you know I'm going to kill you, you really don't care about money. Violence is the ultimate currency in the Middle East. I played a video this morning on this morning's live session about Sharia law, talking about how you cut somebody, like, dude is supporting Sharia, talking about cutting people's hands off. They're going to stop stealing. That is what they're used to. Outer Spaces Landscape says, thanks for all the info. Any idea on the birth rate in Ukraine versus Russia? I can look it up. I can't quote you figures off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I can't. But I got a feeling the birth rate in Russia is going to be going way down because there's a lot of men that are missing. Like Russia, it would be wise for them to take on Islam because at that point, then they could enact Sharia law. Their dudes could have multiple freaking wives. The ones that were too chicken shit or too rich to go to the front line could have multiple wives, and maybe they could slowly start refilling their population, but I doubt that they will. It would be wise for them. Maybe that's Putin's grandmaster plan, you know, like I'm going to be friendly with Islam because, you know, who knows? I might need to repopulate all of Russia because everybody's freaking dying. Some other side that's pissing off a lot of people in Ukraine is this. So let me explain this part to you right after I play it.
Well, at the end of 50 days, if we don't have a deal, it's going to be too bad. Well, the tariffs are going to go on and other sanctions go on.
So what he's talking about is tariffs that are going to be thrown on into people that are, providing material support for Russia and enacting additional 100% tariffs, et cetera, on all these different nations that are going against the sanctions that the U.S. is placed on. Why 50 days? Well, because the EU is flipping retarded and they decided that they're going to base their entire economy off of Russia oil exports going into the EU, which is why the Nord Stream pipeline being blown up was such a big flipping deal. Trouble Actual, I think that's you. Side note, are the Baltic states able to unite and join Ukraine forces, NATO or not? Is that wishful thinking or are they too divided to combine? No, Baltic states hate Russia, but they're not that big. And they have been helping out Ukraine quite a bit, whether you realize or not. But whether or not they're going to go put boots on the ground, I highly doubt it. And then that also opens up another freaking conundrum, which is if you end up having a NATO nation that's on the border with Russia, let's take Estonia, let's take Latvia, let's take Lithuania. If they go and they put troops on the ground inside of Ukraine openly and start killing Russians, and then Russia goes, you know what, we don't like that. And then they attack Lithuania, well, then Article 5 is going to come into play. All of a sudden, NATO's at war with Russia. That's a problem now, isn't it? And I think for that reason alone, they're staying out of it. Smoke says, Matthew 8:10, blessed are the guardians. Yeah. Yep. Reason Matt brought devotionals back. Believe me, man. Believe me on that one. It is getting ridiculous. And I don't think the news is really quiet right now and everything's really kind of slowed down. I don't think people have quite figured it out. But let me ask you this question. Do you think Russia got the message? How do you think Russia feels about all this? You think Russia gives you think Russia gives two craps the United States is actually providing this material support to Ukraine? How do you think they feel about it?
Well, since we've heard specific threats from Washington coming against BRICS, saying that BRICS undermines the interests of the United States, well, let me say this. Earlier...
Let me finish this thought before I end up playing Lavrov's, stupid freaking thoughts, right? The reason we're giving 50 days is so the EU can get their crap together, so that they can figure out petroleum exports, so that they can prepare their economies. 50 days isn't for Russia. 50 days is for the EU, ladies and gentlemen. 50 days has nothing to do with Russia. 50 days is for our allies over inside of the EU so that they can get their act together so that their economies don't explode. Because if their economies explode, guess what? So do ours.
President Trump had a different opinion on that. He directly said that actions made by the Biden administration using the dollar as a weapon has undermined the authority and the respect for the dollar as a currency, irreversible damage. And I'm sure he understands how true that assessment was and how the BRICS and Latin American communities and other organizations have been trying to find ways to settle trade in other currencies to be insured against this actions coming from Washington. This is a process that's happening. Everyone understands that, including Trump, and this process cannot be stopped. It's not something that we wanted. We didn't want to run from the dollar, or other countries never wanted to do that. It was the Americans that tried to use the dollar to punish those who they deemed to be acting wrongly, not in accordance with their rules-based world order. But to be perfectly serious about our threats, it's not our profession to be worried. So we're not worried about anything. Our job is to work under the guidance of international law and respect those principles. And there's no other way our country could behave. So once again, we have all the reasons to believe that countries that are members of BRICS are sovereign, independent countries, and they value and treasure such status.
See, some of you guys asked me who that gentleman is. That is the Russian foreign minister. Dmitry Lavrov, is that right? Yeah, Lavrov. Russia doesn't care about this. Russia doesn't care about like the new sanctions or anything going in. They're basically said they're going to ride it out, and I think I think I know why. Personally, I think I know why. If you go back to the strategic partnership between Iran and Russia, what you'll remember is that part of that strategic partnership is developing that currency, right? That the Western banking systems and sanctions can't touch. Sun Wukong, why do I have a banana? What? Why do I have a banana? We cannot fight wars in multiple theaters. How are we fixing that? Also, with the EU relying on Russian oil, shouldn't that be grounds to expel members from NATO? Yeah, I would think so, to be personally honest with you, man. I don't know what it means by why do I have a banana. But yeah, man, Mr. Kong, yeah, it should be, right? Like, you've got nations that were going against like sanctions and everything else, and they're buying it. But you got to understand that like people were going to go cold. They were going to go hungry. You're talking about freaking like massive like price hikes and everything else, all this other crap. And then the other thing that you end up happening is you have, you know, this oil that's being sold through intermediaries, right? Because Russia's not dumb, so they'll take their oil to put it on the market in a different place, so you get a slight market increase like on the price of oil, which, by the way, price per barrel is coming in right around $67 a barrel a day. Russia needs to keep that sucker right above 65 in order to maintain profitable. And so I bet you oil prices are going to continue to tank over the next month. I bet you Trump's going to come out with some freaking policies that are going to make oil a hell of a lot cheaper and put a bigger strain on the Russian economy. Sir, thanks a lot. 19 months for Matt Tardy. Love. Hell yeah, man. I love that. Mike Brown. We are preparing for combat operations. Americans need to get into that mindset. That day of diplomacy has passed. Mike Brown, you are 1,000% on point. Our diplomacy days are over. There is no more diplomacy. Jason, doesn't India buy Russian oil and then sell it on the other countries on the down low? Yeah, India is actually one of the largest importers of Russian oil. Thank you for pointing that out. Remind me what BRICS stands for again? There's a country in there. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Yes, Russia is always going to find a workaround how to do dirty things. And that's why I like was pointing out to you guys this last year, you know, to pay attention to like geopolitics and everything else. Because if, I mean, crap, man, let me get rid of this garbage and just, you know, get rid of that. I've talked to you guys about the Red Sea. I've talked to you guys about the Suez Canal. And I told you that the Houthis shutting that sucker off had abs. I don't think the Houthis give two shits about Israel. I'm pretty sure they ended up shutting that Red Sea down because Iran told them to do it. Start attacking those ships, et cetera, et cetera. And why would Iran tell them to do it? Because then you've got BRICS nations that are rolling through the Suez Canal, Egypt, right? Along with Russia, Iran, all these other knuckleheads. They're able to get that oil through for cheaper. Meanwhile, everybody's still sailing around all of Africa. Sir, thanks a lot. It says Trump's new policy allows for steady growth of American manufacturing, which will help ease the burden if we do get hot with China. Nailed it. Yeah, it will. I don't even know how to pronounce your name, brother. Let me get it. The Range says, yo. Hello, Matt. What's up, Mr. Range? How are you today, sir? Yeah. You're right, sir. Thanks a lot. It is. It's going to end up easing up on a lot of that. And so part of it was a little bit smart the way he ended up setting things up for the military industrial complex in the United States in order to start benefiting from it. And that's going to ease a little bit, right, when all this push comes to shove. If you want Matt's opinion, like if you guys really want to know the state, like, and I pay attention to a lot of different things. I want you guys to check this out. I'm not giving this to you for investment advice. I'm giving this to you because it absolutely matters. All right. Here, let me go over here. I've never even been to this website before, but I'm going to go over there anyways. I want you guys to take a look at this. And I want you guys to take a look at the chart. We're going to go back 6 months. What you guys are looking at is like the price of silver right now per ounce. And if we go back, dude, even a year, and I want you guys to look at this. The silver was trading at like $26. It's almost it crested 39 the other day, and it's projected to go up to like 40 plus, maybe even 70, etc. Some people are saying triple digits. It doesn't matter, right? When you look at gold reaching all-time highs, gold right now is trading right around $3,327 an ounce. Let's see if it'll actually pull up. It will. Same thing. I want you guys to look at gold. Gold was trading almost $1,000 an ounce below of where it's at now, like a year ago. God forbid we go back all the time when we start looking at it. Let's look at where gold really started to make like a massive increase. What happened like right around this time frame right here? Like 2021 going into 2022 when it really started to take off. 2022, it kind of like dips a little bit and boom, look at where that sucker's at. Why do you guys think that is? Why do you think it's taking such a steep increase? Because investors are pulling their money out and away from the US dollar, away from everything else, and they're putting it into gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, different stock markets. Bitcoin's trading at like 117,000 a freaking coin right now. I mean, it's insane, right? What all of that writing on the wall is saying is people believe that war is coming. And the people that control these markets, FYI, all the big banking systems and everybody else, they're worried about it. And they're betting on future prices. They're betting on everything else because they're worried about money. That's where all that's going to. And you guys can hate it all you want, but it's just a fact. And so what I'm telling you is that everybody in America needs to pull their heads out of their butts. And everybody in America needs to start paying attention to what's going on around the world. I really do believe that. Now, one of the things I said, and I meant it when I said it, was I was going to end up bringing back daily devotionals. I'm getting back on. I ended up knocking out the first one today. It's been probably about 6 months, I think, since I did my last one. Ended up knocking out the first one today. I'm going to end up knocking out another one tonight. If you guys aren't Christian, so be it. I'll see you guys later. You do not have to stick around for it. Do not worry about it. This is something that I used to do a lot that I think that we need to get back in on, and I think like actually needs to get done. I've been being pinged left and right. I'll get DMs like, Matt, why aren't you doing the devotionals anymore? Get your butt back and do the devotionals. Well, here I am. I'm doing back into them. During World War II, Winston Churchill encouraged and supported the people of Britain through endless dark hours. He made many memorable statements and speeches, but one rings particular here. He was speaking to the Parliament just after London had been bombed to smithereens, and he sensed that people were losing heart. It seemed as though Churchill never did. He must have had low moments, but his speeches didn't reveal it. So he said to people in Parliament who were probably quaking in their spirits, "This is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning." Jesus said the same sort of thing to his disciples, telling them, in essence, when you see these things occurring, it isn't the end. This comes out of Matthew 24:6. It says, "And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end." If you live in the light of Christ, return each day of your life, it does wonders to your perspective. If you realize that you must give account for every idle word and action when you stand before the Lord Jesus, it does amazing things to your conduct. It also makes you recognize how many needless activities we get involved in on this earth. Sort of like rearranging the deck of chairs on the Titanic. Don't bother. Don't get lost in the insignificant details. He's coming soon. Recognize the urgency and the simplicity of the hour. Peter seems to have gotten the message. He was a practical man. Prior to the following of Christ, his life consisted of very tangible, practical things: boats, nets, fishing, supporting a family, hard work, etc. And then he met the hard realities of the master. Consequently, we should not be surprised that this personality and his prose followed suit. Being neither scholarly nor sophisticated, Peter had little interest in theoretical discussions. Life was not meant to be talked about, but lived out. In an urgent situation, demanded action. Peter wasn't one to call for a committee to the study of alternatives. He cut through the bureaucratic red tape and got down to business. Ladies and gentlemen, in times like these, in all sorts of other times, yeah, lean on your faith. Look at it. It's not a bad thing. Get after it. And I think that maybe if the United States, if people actually got back into their faith, maybe the world would be just slightly of a better place. We wouldn't have nut jobs like Putin. I hate to say there's absolutely no way of looking at Putin and being like, hey, yeah, that guy's a Christian. He does like amazing things. Nope, he's not. If he was, he wouldn't be doing the things that he's doing. Absolutely sad in this world what we see coming. But yeah, Winston Churchill, great man. You know, like, and here's something else. I'm trying to remember the name of the city. I don't remember it. It'll come to me at some point, maybe. Like, Churchill honestly faced like one of the toughest decisions of the war, because one of the cities was about to get bombed by the Germans. And he knew that like hundreds, if not thousands of his own people would die. And the reason he knew that is because he ended up breaking the Enigma code. like the top secret German code, like it had been broken, and he ended up getting word that the city was about to get bombed, and he had a very difficult decision to make. Do I warn the people in this city that Germany is about to bomb all of them and kill hundreds, if not thousands of my own people? Or do I keep my mouth shut? Because if I put that information out there, if I end up telling my people, Germany most certainly is going to hear about it, and they are going to know we broke the code. But if I hold on to that and I don't tell my people and those people end up dying, well, we might actually win the war because Germany won't know how we're getting all this information. They won't know that we actually broke it. Ultimately, Churchill ended up not telling those people. Germany ended up bombing and people ended up dying. And again, history is where it's at. That is a tough decision. I would hate to have been in his shoes. Smeet Knight says, I'm currently in the process of converting to Orthodox. I'm glad you were seeking wisdom through faith, bro. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. No, I mean, I always am. The reason I ended up backing off was I just wanted to make sure that I was in a good place before I ended up coming out and doing it again. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Ah, yes, Coventry. Thank you. Thank you. Daniel, it was Coventry. Look at you. Look at you freaking history buffs in there. Coventry. Thank you. It was Coventry. So with that message, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you guys until tomorrow morning. I want to let you guys know I want to start doing these nightly live sessions around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Normally I do them at 9, just like I started this one, 9 p.m. And I realized it was unfair. I announced it this morning that I was going to do it at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. But I wanted to give you guys a warning because most of you guys are coming in here at night. So 8 p.m. Central Standard Time is when I am aiming to start doing these nightly live sessions so you guys can see me there. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, peace, love, happiness. God bless. I'm out of here.